Sveiki visi, džiaugiuosi, kad susirinkote šį vakarą, kadangi pokalbis vyks anglų kalba, tai aš iš karto ir persijungiu į anglų iš lietuvių. Hello again, welcome this evening, welcome to the very last this year, not in total, curatorial discussion. This evening we're talking, oh my god, I'm getting a phone call, of course. This night we're talking about curating queer art, or rather maybe art made by queer identified people, and we'll see whether there's a difference on the curatorial approaches and everything else. We have with us Suza Husse, who came from Berlin. I'm very happy that she found the time to squeeze us in. The moderator this night will be Agnė Bagdžiūnaitė, then Augustas Čičelis, and Laima Kreivytė. I think most of these people are known to you, maybe well, maybe not as well. I just want to mention that these series are organized by Kultfluxas and National Gallery of Art. We are funded by Lithuanian Council for Culture. Thank you very much. And we're meeting next year on January 16th, and Curators will talk ecology. So without further ado, Agnė, please.
Okay, hello. Nice to see you here, and especially nice to see also the curators, I guess. Today, well, at this event, we will call ourselves curators, maybe. And so this theme for me, like queer curatorial or curating queerly, is actually for me more acceptable when curating queer, because I already like saying that directly, that I see it also as more political and in terms of methodology, more democratic and unhierarchical, and all that we're gonna talk, I think, here as well. And so first, maybe I will ask like more general questions, and you can decide if you want to answer it, or you will skip that one. And so first of all, I want to ask about queer spaces. And I don't think we are here in a queer space, like we are in a National Gallery of Art. Sometimes it can be queer, but only some exceptional moments, I guess. And well, usually the queer space or the queer safe space is refers to, or spaces refer to spaces that allow members of the queer and LGBTQ plus communities to be protected for purposes such as being and learning, performing and producing queer identifications. And although the term has been used within queer and LGBT plus communities and also like in activist circles, but I don't think there is a clear definition. I don't think we know the definition, but we have, I guess, our own definitions also, which are very important. And that's why I would like to ask you how you define, and not necessarily like this concrete material space, but also the space for safety for queer members of the community. Let's start from Suza.
Hi everyone, nice to see you. I really kind of in the last years have gotten rid of the curator as a definition and role for myself, but because I work in quite collective ways and in ways that also include artistic and activist practice, and I'm struggling with also with the hierarchies somehow inscribed in the role of the curators. So somehow, yeah, I kind of, at the moment, I like to define myself more as a poet and as a cultural worker. And I brought a few publications because they are part of processes and of projects and of making of queer spaces that I've been involved in. And I brought them also to bring a few more voices because, as I said, I work a lot in collective and collaborative ways from intersectional perspectives and a lot in relation to anti-racist and decolonial work in Germany, but also internationally. So in response to this question, and thank you, Agnė, also for sending us these questions beforehand, because we were able to prepare, or at least could think through them a little bit. So what I wanted to do in response to this question of like, what is queer space and how do we define safer spaces or safe spaces within queer art practice and curating, I wanted to read just from an interview that I made as part of a project called Wild Recuperations Material from Below, which was a project that initiated collective research in an archive in Berlin, and this archive is called the Archive of the GDR Opposition, and it collects a lot of ephemera and materials from political groups that were active during state socialism in East Germany. And it has a large collection of feminist, lesbian, gay histories at the time, and also of like environmental movement. And it was really important for me to work with people on this archive, because it also allowed me to get in touch with my own, I guess, biography in a dissonant way. I grew up in Dresden, and when I grew up in Dresden in the 80s and 90s, I was not, I didn't have access to any queer people, representation, and so on. So at the time, I grew up basically without knowing that these kind of lives were possible. And I guess we'll talk about representation and stuff a bit more, but I wanted to read from this interview with one of the organizers of the lesbian and also black lesbian movement in Dresden, because I think it talks a lot about what are queer spaces historically, especially in relation to my history, but also today. So I'm just going to read this a little bit and then respond to it a bit more, and maybe there's other responses that you guys also have or connections. This person is called Ina Röder-Sissoko, and I'm just going to read a bit from her. For a long time, I was the only black woman who was active in the lesbian scene in Dresden. In the beginning, it wasn't really an issue for me, since I was happy just to be able to work together with other lesbians. But as we got closer to the end of the 1980s, racism and neo-fascism were on the rise, and as a result, of course, my personal situation changed dramatically. When I tried to address this in the group, the others actually denied it. They said, well, you know, we're all women, all lesbians, we're all dealing with oppression. I wasn't heard, and I came up against a lot of ignorance among the white lesbians. That was pretty intense. That was also the time, starting in 1988, when I began to organize with other black women and with black men as well. Being lesbian was no longer a problem for me. My life was in danger daily because I was black, not because I was a lesbian. My political activities and alliances changed accordingly. Officially, there was no racism in the GDR, and if you tried to address racist experiences, it was ignored. So then I was involved in different groups, in the lesbian movement and in the Initiative Schwarzer Menschen in Deutschland, which is the initiative of black people in Germany, which in Dresden was called Der Ring. It was an organization of black and Afro-German people, and we met regularly and talked about black identity and black empowerment. And first and foremost, we organized practical support structures, such as self-defense courses and emergency phone lines, trying to make our lives in Dresden safer. So I chose this part because I think for me, organizing queer spaces within and mostly outside of institutions actually has a lot to do with actual life experiences, and the question of safety is very different for people, let's say, that have different positionalities. And I also chose this quote because at the moment in Germany, but also elsewhere, we're dealing with a massive rise of fascist and racist and right-wing structural, but also everyday violence. And for me, as an organizer and as a curator, or curator unbecoming a curator, the question of safety is always to do with whom we're talking about, and with whom, because I mean LGBTQI or queer community is also perceived differently depending from which positionality people are inside or outside of it. So for me, I'm trying with, and that's why I work also collectively, to really have a space in which the thing that Ina describes of not being heard and not being able to address things that are life-threatening and that are part of a positionality that also people don't choose but are made to feel is a really important part of organizing projects, organizing, especially looking into histories and futures and presents, to really think about who does this talk to, who feels invited, who feels safe to speak, because often I think there's also this thing of like, I don't know, the queer as the as a bit the kind of layer on top of diversity cultures, of like pluralizing institutions, when then they continue to be ableist, when they continue to be racist, when they continue to be classist, and so on. So I think, yeah, I mean, it's a long-winded answer, but I don't really have a full answer. I think it really depends on who we're working with, what are the spaces that we are accessing and that we're making possible, and how do we reflect within our own ways of organizing and of making infrastructures, of how we reproduce certain patterns and structures that actually create the unsafety in the first place. Yeah, maybe someone else wants to go.
Well, space for us is a term which we use in Išgirsti as well as the Kreivas festival, because we overuse it sometimes as well. But for us, it was one of the main things we wanted to do, like to create this space, and not necessarily like a space, a physical space, as you say, like not a place. But with Išgirsti, we're trying to also to have a permanent space, which is between this private and public. We try to keep it safe in this way as well, not having it as a public space and a completely public space, but have it in this, which is accessible. Information is accessible everywhere, but at the same time, it is some way where you would would seem more private. But for instance, with Kreivas, for us it was very important. It started 11 years ago now, so we started with different festival in the beginning, but then it developed in this wider cultural event, and then one of the things was to have a space, to develop the space, to I don't know, occupy the place, and then make it into something queer, and then where people could come and then could have different experiences which they would have every day to day, and then where would they feel more guests going somewhere, they would come here and would feel more owners, or would feel like those for whom this place is, and not as guests or visitors, but more of a community, part of a community. But of course, these questions which she raises are very important, and it also very relates to the content which we curate or which we put in events or happenings. would they be something which reflects upon different experiences? Would they be something which would speak to different people, not only, yeah, I don't know, white men as me, or yeah. So and in Kreivas it just went naturally that actually like the content is much more focused on women and trans and we search for different experiences and then. But is the space, queer space, always safe? No. Like, no, I don't know. Like, for instance, talking about Sapphofest, which is a really great space as such, created in the fields, in the countryside. But I remember myself like the happenings in Sapphofest which were not safe. You know, like But is it possible in our society to make the space completely safe? I don't know. Like. It's, I think maybe it's somewhere we would want to go or to want to have, but then it's always a threat of a society which we live in, and then so how we safeguard it, like how, so whether sometimes we can invest more in seeing. I remember like 11 years ago and 10 years ago and 9 years ago, we would inform the police. When we were making Kreivas, we would inform the police and the police would be always standing behind the corner and nothing happened. Not because the police was standing there, but in general, like cultural happenings, it seemed they are less important for people, they would seem, for the general society or the hater groups, sometimes cultural happenings seem much less important than no political happenings. But I think that's why there is so much more power in it sometimes, because it's somehow forgotten and it's much more possibilities to develop something much stronger and which would breach anything which would be imagined and political. So.
It's very interesting that you mentioned spaces, safe spaces. I was not very much interested in queer spaces, but more as queering spaces, not really establishing something, but going to the spaces which are there and trying to uncover something what is queer, or just to make them queer, or make an exhibition which is queer. And especially, I liked targeting big institutions, which are usually like so mainstream. And recently, yes, it's queer, it's fashionable. So all big institutions, they want to include queer artists. They are doing queer exhibitions. They have little programs. You go to any museum and you find a little leaflet which says queer, and then you can go through the collection and look which artists, which works reflect queer art. But in the beginning, after the independence, such thing didn't exist. So it was important just to do anything at all costs. And really, I wanted to do this always like, I don't know, contemporary art center, which was friendly. And as you said, art spaces are usually more open. And they are more open not only for the society and artists, but also in a sense that, as you said, they are safer in that sense that even those crazy politicians, like we have one typical example being Petras Gražulis, who is always trying to make his political capital attacking queer people, but even him didn't come at the opening to our exhibition in 2013. We sort of expected him, because it's like, oh, how good to show off himself. But no, he didn't show up, because it's like art. What is art? Art in a way is queer already for some people. It's not normative. So I like this. I like that art somehow, in my imagination, is already a queer thing. Because we don't expect something really normal and natural from art, or at least I don't expect. It's so boring. You don't go to art spaces to see something which is like so typical. Then, Yeah, I don't go. But who goes to the art spaces to see something which is so typical? I don't know. It's maybe not a space. So yeah, I'm more interested in queering spaces.
Yeah, thank you for your thoughts, but I still want to a bit grasp this safety issue, because I feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm too pessimistic, but it's also, how you can be optimistic these times. But because what we see maybe in Vilnius or in centers, it's very different from what we see in other cities, in other towns. And I have an example from my own experience. Me and my friend, my colleague, Edvinas Grinkevičius, we just had, just recently, we finalized this huge project, which was called Obscene West Naglis. And it was kind of, we like announced the public event with all the queer program, with drag shows and music performances. And just when we wanted to start the event, the police came and told us to evacuate the building because they got the call about the bombing, like about like the threat, yeah, the bomb threat. And so we had to leave. We had to leave the building. Of course, the beautiful thing was that a lot of people came to the event, like hundreds or more, and then they waited. They waited together with us when they can come back to the building and see all the performances and make it happen. And it was really beautiful, but at the same time, you see that, like, yes, it's also different context from Vilnius, from the capital, from the center, but at the same time, it's also a kind of, I feel that it's still, like, it's becoming more and more dangerous. It's not becoming less and less dangerous. Somehow, it's like, the tendencies, what we see in Europe, how it moves quickly, and it can really, like, change during the, I don't know, one night, one decision is taken and our rights are taken away. So I wonder, like, what do you see as the strategies to kind of prevent that and to somehow connect with each other and somehow make it, like, stop it from happening?
It's a very big question. I don't have a strategy, actually. I remember very clearly. I was thinking about this this event, but also it's interesting how it mobilized people. I think the event became much more interesting because of that as well, and then how people were mobilized and how they were, like, you know, like, I think there was something additional special about the event at that moment. Of course, it's, you know, it's a sad story in a way that people have to go through that, of course, and I don't know how, you know, it's very difficult. Like, you know, when you talk about the shifting situations, I also remember very clearly, like, Hungary, how it went from this very inclusive and very interesting and for LGBT people country and accepting and whatever, like, but into this something extreme when you know, how the pride changed as well very suddenly, and then it's an example. And also Poland, the directions it was taking at different times. So it's but when I start thinking about this meta level, I just suddenly feel very small. And my strategy is to make spaces and to keep on making spaces, to make what I can make. I have different roles in my life where I can where I feel that I can do something, because otherwise when it's the like this, everything is political of course, but like this what we're talking about, this country politics or whatever, it's not something where which is interesting for me personally, and where I would feel a power or agency in that. So it's very important not to lose your agency, I think, in this process, and then to find your agency, to locate your agency where it really is, and then to keep on doing the things which matter in this way. And sometimes it's, of course, I understand that sometimes it's not something which would change the setting as such. It would help to go through some things for people to survive difficult situations and so on, but it still matters in this way, because sometimes it's, even the service provision is really devalued because it's not making political change, but people are living here and now, and people want to self-express here now. They want to I don't know, to go through life here and now, and it's very important as well. Like, I think so. It's different roles for so my strategy is not to feel helpless, not to locate the place where I don't feel helpless, where I feel that I can do something. So that's my strategy.
I'm thinking more about language and histories. We are communicating through language, and that's why it's important to have words and strategies really to deal with homophobia or hate speech. And there are different ways to address that. One of the ways is actually Valerie Solana's way of reversing the speech. For example, there is this Lithuanian Bono, or maybe just like Lithuanian origin poet from the States. He's that Vytautas Pliura, who wrote many beautiful poems, and one of the poem is "Kill Heterosexuals." It's like it's shocking for some people, but it's like exactly what queer people hear on daily basis. Oh, who are you? You need to be killed or burnt or whatever. And then other strategies could be just to oppose it, like or using exactly the same sentences for queer and straight things, as it's like in literature, in Dickens or in Alice Smith, where she's addressing something really critical times, and then there was this like beautiful opening. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, and then Alice Smith used this in her novel Autumn, describing Brexit, and suddenly people woke up. And for them, it was the best of times for some people, and it was the worst of times. It was the most amazing moment, it was the worst moment. And then, like, you are saying exactly the same thing, but just like the opposite, and it's like addresses this tensions in the society. And also, of course, gendering. Like, some languages are very gendered, like our Lithuanian language, for example. And I see Agnė in the audience, who is proposing really to drop some endings which refer to female or male gender, and just to look for some neutral positions. Because in Lithuanian, even like using pronouns doesn't make sense. Like, for example, you go to the conference or somewhere, and people, like, there is this beautiful palette of sort of identities, pronouns, and you can choose like she, he, them, and so on. But in Lithuanian language, them doesn't make sense, because it's even like plural is either feminine or masculine. So why then to choose this or that? It's just like very complicated. So we need to address specific issues and to find creative ways how to deal with that, and maybe push it to the crisis, really to go to the extremes. I'm not suggesting easy ways. I would suggest something like really certain subtle conflicts. Not immediately going to barricades, but really addressing directly the issues, not trying to be easy and nice, not to please everybody, just for the beginning, and then we shall see.
Yeah, I mean, this. I think the threat on not only queer, or like queer identifying people, is really like really strong at the moment. I don't know if people are aware here of what's going on in Germany, but I think I'm definitely living the worst of times, and I've never been as disillusioned and frightened about what is going on politically in my life as I am now. And just to give you some context, so basically like on a cultural level, we have a lot of the big institutions that would make space consistently over the last years for queer, BIPOC, visibility, for, I don't know, intersectional practices and so on, that are at the moment censoring, cancelling, and putting into very strong precarity cultural workers, artists, thinkers, writers that are through biographical or political positionalities affiliated or in solidarity with the suffering and the genocide that is going on in Palestine. So what's happening in Germany is that there is a massive right-wing backlash on the back of this war into basically shutting down on the streets through police violence, in the cultural institutions through silencing, and through the passing of laws that exacerbate and really make impossible the lives of black people, people of color, migrants, refugees, but also people in solidarity, and also Jewish people of a different opinion to the Israeli state at the moment. And we see this on such a structural level that I mean, I have not had big illusions about what institutions can do in terms of actual empowerment or in actual change, but at the moment I feel what is going on has reached a level that it hasn't been at before, and I see that a lot of people around me, especially white people, white German cultural workers, people at the heads of institutions, people working in institutions, but also outside of them, are absolutely silent in response to this. So I think, like, I don't know what needs to happen, like on the one hand is for me to continue the informal community networks that I have been part of and building over many, many years, and that actually some of them, of course, they have a public component, but I think that the issue of safety is at a life level for many people, and that doesn't only speak to racist violence, it's also about transphobic violence that we see a massive increase in Germany at the moment, and so on. So I don't know, like I see there's a lot of organizing going on in trying to resist and also protest and also find legal forms of resisting these dynamics. And most of them are actually not done by the let's say dominant white majority, but are done by the people who are not the only ones affected, but are affected differently. But I think what we can learn there, and that's also like one big learning I have from working with different activist groups, is that the people who are struggling for change and for resistance and for different kind of spaces and political forms are the ones that are actually offering solidarity in some way to all of us, because we will all be affected by these changes. So I think one way to deal with it is to actually create forms that call out and call into accountability the very institutions that say that they are open, that are, and also politicians, and like go on the streets and so on. I think like we need to be aware that at the moment, the kind of things that we had thought are going into progress, you know, like that there's more space, there's more freedom, there's more democratic, inclusive spaces are being shut down. At least that's what I see happening around me. And we can learn from Hungary, we can learn from different other places in which this is happening, but it is really about, I think everybody, if they're queer identified or not, has agency in trying to talk about this, trying to resist this, and I think we need to find ways of like mobilizing together, but also finding joy in the ways we are living, in the ways like also what you were saying, like in poetry, in the ways of like finding ways of resistance and of joy of coming together, because that's, I think, the biggest way of, I don't know, having some form of revenge or some form of empowerment. But I'm really massively concerned with what's going on, and I don't know if these like informal structures that I've been so active in can actually become so loud. I think they're more like maybe offering space of like survival differently to political protest or like as part of it, but somehow, yeah, I'm a bit at a loss at the moment in relation to this, I have to say. Yeah.
We have a question.
Yeah, I do have a question.
But
can I do it now or do I have to do it later?
I think it's
can we?
if you just go now. Do you want the mic?
Yeah.
I can also wait, it's fine.
It's just, I think, for the everybody to hear it.
Yeah, I also thought so. Okay. So it's really nice, everything you guys are saying, that like we should, you know, be all together and, you know, find our joy being together and finding joy of, you know, the queer community and resisting and being aware. And that's really beautiful, like it all is. But in practicality, I think just being queer and living your queer life in general, like for example, in such countries as Lithuania, I'm not talking about Berlin, that's already brave enough. So like, I don't, like, in some Western parts of the world, yes, I do see that like coming together and like being a huge power and fighting against some institutions, that can happen. But there are like many parts of the world where you are just like shitting your pants to even be open about, you know, who your identity to your parents. I'm not even talking, you know, about going into the streets or doing protests or whatsoever. So this is, yeah, again, this is very beautiful, but again, in reality, I don't think that that can happen really, that the queer power is, at least, for example, like I'm just talking about Lithuania, is that it's that big that we can, you know, make some revolutions happen. Just, yeah, you know, that's just my opinion. And you know, maybe talking more of a practical way, how can we create these sort of things? I think that would be maybe a little bit more encouraging instead of dreaming the dream. Sorry.
I wouldn't be so sure that it's so bad in Lithuania, judging from my personal experience. I'm sure that there are really places where it's really very, very dangerous, especially smaller towns and villages. But we have a strong queer community, different communities. Like look at the Sappho festival. So some over like 200 maybe people are coming, and then there are queer people in many institutions, and they do artworks. They I don't know, organizing different kind of events. I'm not saying that it's so easy and it's fun and nobody is affected or threatened. Homophobia is still very present, but just now there is an exhibition of Janina Sabaliauskaitė at Drifts Gallery, and also like on Thursday there will be an opening of Volunge in that another space which is more, it's not like exhibition space, at Vilnius 22, like showing those trans people and different, yeah, it's still there, of course, a threat, but I wouldn't be so, how to say, so dark about this. I think this solidarity, when you come to the people who are like around you, if you actively seek contacts and I don't know, your group, your friends, it's much easier then. Of course, if you think that you are alone and if you're sort of closed, then it's really difficult and complicated. But it's important to feel this solidarity, to really come to people, to if you know somebody, if like here in the audience, in the exhibitions, anywhere. So I guess solidarity is perhaps the most important thing, especially in such communities which are already in a way outcast. What I feel a threat not only from outside, but I think sometimes the difficult thing is that in our small groups we are divided. This is really sometimes bothers me. Like there are a lot of feminisms and that's nice, but then when those feminists are divided on some small issues, so well, maybe it's not the most important things how we differed in certain respects. Maybe we should be united in our fight against patriarchy. And the same thing with queerness and everything. So I would really call for like bigger solidarity, because what's happening, this radical right, it's united despite that they are so different. They have all those different craziness and they are together. But we are such individuals, so individual and so different, and we're respecting all those differences. But that's okay, we can respect, we can be different, very different, but still united. That's the thing, like really, let us be different, have different opinions.
I also wanted a bit react to, it's here, what Laima, what you have said previously about being safe because no one cares about art, like with the case 2013 and CC. But for me, it's rather, I think it's not only, with queer, but it also, I think, fits to queer. That no one really doesn't, no one cares when it's inside of the box, inside of the gallery, inside of the building, and basically if you don't go inside, you don't see it. And this is like really, seems that you can do quite a lot of things, but if you would do exactly the same in a public space, that would be probably much different. And of course, like Agne's example with the policeman and the bomb, it's, yeah, it doesn't really support exactly this idea, but still I have this feeling about, yeah, the space, rather safe, closed space, and the space in the public that is much more observed, I would say, yeah.
I will let you. I just wanted to say I really appreciate all the interaction. It's not the usual case in our Lithuanian audience that you get, and I think it's like I read an article on Russia and how Putin actually, what was the strategy that people in Russia wouldn't care about the politics and what's happening on that level, you know? So basically, the strategy also from Putin and from KGB was that people would care only about their lives, what's going on their ground, around them, like in their apartment. It's sort of like continuous from like what we have in the Soviet kitchen, right, in Soviet times, and nothing else. That's your focus. That should be your focus. The politics is not your, sphere of interest. You don't know. You don't have a say. And this is, I think, where my question also comes in with like institutions and how we should react, what institutions do, what are they showing, what is happening. And also, I think Laima also said very well that like you always have to somehow, you know, in some way overtake it, like, or like think of how to take it over. And the institutions are still what we have. We cannot abandon them. We cannot leave them to, you know, whatever, whatever shows or whatever content they produce. I think the institutions, that's where we can act also politically and where we can engage and talk to each other as well. So that would be our space, not only someone else's space, not only like the stage that matters, you know. And that's, for me, I think also one of the strategies how to interact politically in our like life.
Thanks. I wanted to respond to you also, because for me, queerness is really about actually dreaming and being like alive in a space, and that is real and not real at the same time because of the conditions we all live in. Because I think the hostility towards our lives, even if we create moments or spaces temporarily or sometimes longer, they're always kind of out of joint. They're always instances in a timeline that's against us. So for me to dream and to interconnect that kind of dreaming of another way and another life that is possible, and it's possible because we feel it inside ourselves, and also we feel it when we're connected, is a reality that is somehow at odds with most of the reality we are faced with. So I totally appreciate what you're saying in terms of like for many people here in Berlin and other places, to be queer means a lot of threat and means a lot of struggle, but at the same time it means to live also a reality that is not the reality, that we are kind of, you know, or like finding different ways of belonging. And that's why I think for me, queerness and political imagination, which is another word for dreaming, are very interconnected. And I think in shutting it down, because that's what we hear, or that's what I hear since I'm a kid, it's like you want too much, or this is not possible, or this is like, you know, why do you need to like shake up the stuff, or like why do you need to have your own way, like why do you need to do it like that? I mean, it's basically a way of totalitarian thinking coming into my body every time. And like if we shut it down for ourselves and in ourselves, I think that's the most oppressive thing we can do to ourselves in a way, if we stop dreaming or if we stop understanding and knowing and feeling that another world is possible. And I think that's why, for me, the question is, where do we put our energies? Like, I am not actually interested in putting my energies in changing institutions, to be quite frank. Because I'm interested in building structures with people that want to actually dream together and act together from those dreams. And that can be in small ways, in making happenings, in, I don't know, taking care of a lake or taking care of a tree or whatever. But somehow I feel that with at least like the experiences I've been having over the last 15 years in institutions is that in order to change the things that we see need to change, it's us who get exhausted. It's not the structures who get exhausted. We just kind of all the time work against and against and against, and sometimes that can feel like something is changing, and that can feel like we're making the spaces in which we can connect, in which people can interact, and I totally believe in doing that too. But I don't know, at the end of the day, and what I'm seeing in the contexts where I'm working, they're not there for us. And actually the structures inside don't change, the payment politics inside don't change, the kind of hierarchies inside don't change. Like, who are the people in long-term positions of power? Who are the people that change constitutional protocols because they're actually not changed, or not much. And that's why I feel, I don't know, my life energy, I want to put it like partly into that I've done, but like actually, I don't know, that we need to be the people who exhaust ourselves all the time.
Never. You should always do things what you like, what you love, what you feel the best, that's only you can do. That's the most important rule, not to go and do things which are like, why? If you don't feel like you want this, you feel like it makes sense. But I think that we need to do all of the things, not to say, I mean, it feels like it makes much more sense to work like this grassroots, to self-organize, to have our communities, to have our little exhibitions or spaces or something, and it is very important. But I guess if we are not addressing the institutions or not doing with it, not collaborating with them, not queering them, it's just like, okay, I mean, in Lithuania at the moment, it's not hopeless. I think those institutions are quite open. From my experience, it's not like in Poland, where they really change all the like important museum directors and everybody. So it's not happening here, maybe yet. I hope not. I hope never. But I think it's like with feminism waves. You need all kinds of feminists. So if there would have not been those radicals who were changing themselves and like bomb something, I'm not advertising like bombing, but generally there should have been radicals for pushing, like really active. Then when they were pushing very actively, then there were those liberals who were negotiating in terms of laws to really achieve the law, to get the rights to vote. Then there has to be intellectuals who would form the discourse, who would think about language, about like the education programs and everything. So you need the collaboration of all the groups, all the people. I mean, it's of course you cannot do this like wearing from above, but only like working in our circle it's also impossible unless the situation is that dreadful that you cannot really do anything. Maybe in Hungary it's like this, I don't know. If you are completely shut from everything, of course, why you should bump your head into that wall? So I understand that. But generally, if it's possible, I would say go everywhere, be persistent. Like I just came from this queer arts festival in Belfast, in Outburst. There was a woman who was an editor in in a supplement of one of the major daily newspapers in Buenos Aires. So can you imagine, main daily newspaper would have this queer supplement every week. Amazing. But of course they were trying like years and years and years for like, why not to do this? But at one point, it was like, of course, leftist newspaper. At one point, they pushed it through, and it was like 11 years. Maybe it's still going. I don't know what's happened with the new president, which is like difficult. Might everything shut down? I don't know what will happen. But for 11 years, it was running every week in the major newspaper. So I think educationally it was very, very important, although they had sometimes to negotiate, but not on the most important things, not really to put this under the table. So I guess sometimes it's worth pushing that, just be persistent.
Yeah, but again, I think it's also where agency is what I said. Like, you know, if you're good at that, and if you find a drive in that, it's really good. But for instance, for us, what we were doing, it's a lot about community. Like really staying in the community, supporting the community, and also the side thing we do also is psychological support as well on the side. And of course, it's for some people. You cannot expect those people to go and I don't know, just yeah, to be open, even to be open in the public, you know, like for some it's a really long way to go to be there, and then it's everyone's pace, and you know, like for some, like for instance, they need therapy for 5 years only, and that's what the most they can do. They go, you know, to stand by themselves and like going for therapy, finding support in that, and then going together with someone, and like, and that's also, you know, that's their pace. And then someone else's pace is connecting, and I don't know, finding others and connecting. And for instance, when we do film screenings, we understand that sometimes film screenings is for those who like to get lost in the dark space, or like to get lost in this where there are a lot of people. If we do a public screening, for instance, to cooperating with Meno Avilys, for instance, and Patiltė, and it's somewhere going public. It is about going out of, and then it's, you know, people are running, but then it's sort of a space. You know, it's so public that it's kind of safe already, and then it's so it's playing with these ways, and for instance, historically thinking about these spaces, of course they were more for men, the spaces meeting other men, because yeah, that's happened, like that. It's much less of public spaces for women historically, or socialist times, but it's also those spaces were like very public, very central, and the people managed to survive in these very, very central settings, having this, you know, the more public, the more central, the safer it felt somehow. You know, there is this paradox as well, and so it's interesting to play with that as well, I think. So it's, yeah.
Yes, I think. Yeah, there are many ways how to deal and how to kind of establish yourself and establish the practices and networks and take over the institutions. I'm still on this, but let's talk maybe a bit of I don't know. For me. It's also interesting, the history, the archives, how we tell stories, because it usually, like often, is marginalized. We don't hear them. We don't hear, you know, that there is certain stuff that you don't know, and it's very somehow relevant, I think, also today in terms of like what. For example, how Lithuanian media acts with like genocide in Palestine, and it's interesting that certain subjects don't exist, and certain do, and they have a say, and there is a voice, and certain don't. So you see how these hierarchies and also marginalization and desperation happen, and I wonder, let's talk about a bit of Lithuanian history in terms of queer history. And I want to ask Laima about this exhibition that you made in 2013. And it's kind of anniversary of 10 years.
Yeah.
That's the dot, yeah.
Thank you, Agnė, for asking about this, because we're talking about queer curating, and of course it's a complicated topic, so that's why it includes all those like spaces, language, and collaborations. In 2013, there was an idea to celebrate 20 years of LGBTQ freedom in Lithuania, because male homosexuality was criminalized in the Soviet system, and because Lithuanian legislation only changed that law in 1993 after the independence. So since then we are sort of counting that it's freedom for LGBTQ people. So it was actually Lithuanian Gay League who came with the idea that we need to somehow address this, and they issued a call for an exhibition and sent to selected curators and nobody responded to that call. Part of this silence was that they did it really late. I think they did it in February maybe, and usually art institutions or art spaces, they have their programs by the end of the year or even sooner. So basically not much spaces were left. But I was interested, so I responded. It turned out that I was the only who actually responded to that call. Oh well, at that time, 2013, it was not that easy. It's not that now it's easy, but at that time, even some of my colleagues who later turned out to be queer, I didn't know at that time, but even they thought it's like, oh, but you are ruining your career. Never thought of that. And it never happened in my experience. But anyway, but what I wanted, I really wanted to go to like mainstream space, because queer art is usually like, I'm so tired to be in the shadows, in the margins, somewhere, little, unseen, unnoticed. I thought that like, let's go for the major art institution. But of course, they have already their exhibition plans. And it turned out that in the end, only 2 spaces were left, which were not very central. Educational, this library sort of, which was nice and light and beautiful space, and basement, which I thought, oh, it's maybe some kind of, I don't know, sadomaso or whatever, some basements. Like historically, basements are nice. So okay, why not to connect? So the spaces were very small actually. So I just asked those artists who were working with queer subject at that time. My selection criteria was not that the artist should have been queer, because, I don't know, some people want to state it, some people don't, and then besides, like, there are so many different identities. But if you are dealing with queer subjects, so that was my idea, but also I wanted to invite one quite homophobic artist who was dealing with queer subject. I thought it would have been really funny in a way. Maybe not, maybe I was crazy, but I really wanted to invite Gintaras Namirovsky, who is doing some kind of like depicting lesbians or some feminists in that very strange way. And I thought, let's have this like spectrum. But then he refused. He didn't want to be in this queer setting, because of course, if you are in this queer exhibition, you somehow associated with queer people. But what was important also to include certain names which were like even before this younger generation, like Virginijus Šonta. I already included him into this gender check exhibition where Bojana Page was curator. And she asked researchers from different countries. I was a researcher from Lithuania, so Šonta was shown there already, and then also here. Also, Aušra Griškonytė Volongė, who will open an exhibition on Thursday. So she did this in '99, this wonderful series which she called Horse, Kakšės. That's how those trans people called themselves at that time. Yeah, so the Šonta and Aušra Griškonytė, they had this, the separate exhibitions in Modern Art Center and in a smaller gallery. And also there were queer readings. The Eileen Miles came for readings, and what else? We did this kind of historical timeline, asking people from different areas to select important events. So we have this timeline. It's of course incomplete, but I'm happy that people are doing now works with archives. So this history is becoming more and more consistent. And yeah, so there is a catalog, and there is PDF of this catalog online. So with also some films made from Lithuanian Gaelic from the archive. And they are also with English subtitles, and they are short and very educational in the sense that you can see how the approach of media is changing. How in the beginning of the independence, people are sort of gays, whoever, no, they are not very much interested, they don't have their opinion, but then at certain point they are becoming very hostile against gays, and then there is this funny moment where one TV host asks people, what do they think about Homo sapiens? And people are responding as if to the homosexuals, and it's really funny because there's like, anyway, so you can also find those videos online. So yeah, so it was also text by Artūras Tereškinas, and at that time Nida Vasiliauskaitė, who yeah, so people are changing, you see, life is different. So I don't want to talk a lot because you can find this catalog, and if anybody is interested, you can come to me and I can tell more, but I don't want to take too much time and space, so thank you for asking this.
Yeah, because I think it's very, well, important a part of the history, and when we, especially when we talk about queer curating. And then, of course, I'm going to come to you, Augustas, about the queer archive, and that's like a different kind of direction and methodology that you kind of maybe do, and not you alone, but with colleagues and comrades. And you probably, of course, you know, and you have connections with Karol Radyszewski and his archive, Institute of Archive, and his kind of approach of doing it, kind of mixing it up with his own like personal experiences while growing up in the 90s, being queer. And so I wanted to ask the connection between, did you like somehow get inspired by him, or was it somehow, or you discovered later, or, and also like, how do you see that that practice of archiving this very important history?
Yeah, we try to archive or document our process of archiving in this third issue of Kreivytė magazine. So we also have an interview with Karol in it, because what we try to do with Queer Archive is to be as slow as possible, because and also no funding helps as well, that we don't really have funding, so we don't have to not proper funding, so we don't have to write these reports all the time, you know, and report for a process, and so we try to keep it as slow as possible. And well, one of the things we did was the research about how the archives work in the region, and of course you cannot ignore Karol's project, and this is very. And when we talk about archives, we mention it all the time. And Laima worked with him on the exhibition in Triennale, but it is a personal artistic practice at the end. What Karol does. So it's called an institute, and it very nicely played in as well, playing with this word of institute and archives as a plural, and at the end it is artistic practice. Our project is more complex, I think, and it's more also group project. So none of us is artists, only from this extent. The group of Išgirsti Anton Kariukis is an artist from our team, but others are well, we're curators or coordinators or whatever you could call it, cultural workers, historians, but so we try to work it in the different ways. And for us, it was very important to do this research because to understand that it's possible, and it's almost anything is possible with Queer Archive. And then it's a nice thing, but it's also a threat in the way that you have to do everything. And so from trying, like, from getting away from that, to dropping in this, that we have to do everything, we try to make it as slow and then think about things. And so sometimes we work slower than we would want, or instinctively would do, you know. And then somehow we cooperate a lot with cultural institutions at the end. It became because we somehow can bring our expertise and like what we try to work on for artists and cultural institutions, but also trying to do it slow. And then so we on Saturday with Pavel Danstudas, we also had this chance of talking about cruising more, for instance, and also just making this mosaic of things. And then since it's so a lot of things, and we try to make it, you know, like this mosaic, and then like it slowly goes to somebody know some window or something. So it's or a drawing. So that's how we try to do it, and then also keeping it a communal project initiative, so that it is actually for the community, that the community, we're working with the community, having interviews with the community, and also working as a library, trying to collect things as well. And then this is also a very important thing. We also have it in our library, and you know, it's part of the history as well. And then trying to and it's kind of recent project from the end of 2020, but actually we've been working with this memory theme for quite a while, because in Kreivytė we always try to bring this queer memory section all the time, and then this is our colleagues started also magazine, Kreivytė magazine, and this is Kreivytė magazine on Kreivytė, so everything, like, you know, it's this is Kreivytė magazine on Safo, and then it's trying to document our own process, not to lose it, and it's nice when we have something physical left afterwards, and then when everything is accepted, because the threat is that with our history as well, because we also, for instance, have this COVID archive, COVID stories, because it's the illusion that we live in this time which never ends, you know, like contemporarity is where we are, and then somebody will take care of archiving it afterwards. But no, it's like we lose everything on the way. And then when we ask questions of people about about COVID experience, people were like, and then like they were going through photos, and they said, oh, there was this thing, and like this completely forgotten stories. So like, you know, it's so it's a lot of things. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but
you did. Okay. We can also ask the audience. And yeah, the last question, and I think we have to wrap up soon. And to Suza. And I wanted to ask about, so we have this, curating strategies, and queer curating and curating queerly, and like still you have a lot of experience as a curator, and you're like, now you renounce it and saying that like and that's your sort of a kind of profession in a way, and I wonder how you deal with this kind of and connect this resistance and curating, and in the way that you would see it also as still for queer community or for people to come together to make a network, to do something together. And I know you brought zines, and also you are very much into publications now. So can you tell me, and then we can move to the questions.
Sure. Actually, I brought these publications because Goda asked to suggest something for the library here, and I really like to work through ephemera like zines, and also there are these posters that we made this year as part of a larger exhibition called House of Cult with an activist group in Berlin called Women in Exile. And it's what I really like to do, and you can call it curatorial practice or archiving practice or artistic practices. It's really related to what you both were saying. It's about how to basically document, circulate, and learn from and think through and make accessible particular knowledges that we can say are related to queer life experiences in the past and the present and the future, but also that are, for me, have to do with pushing the horizon of what's missing and what's possible, because I think depending on, of course, how we identify, but somehow you know, I mean, we're kind of socialized into working from the gaps, into kind of interpreting and knowing and being sensitive to what is not there, because we need it, because we are it in different ways. And a lot of people that are put in marginalized positions have these kind of abilities and sensibilities differently also, and of course also depending on their particular position. But I think this, like, pushing the horizon of what's missing is something that I really like to do with people through also collecting stories, like oral histories, publishing them in different ways. Sometimes they get really big, but this is in a way a collection of zines that was at the basis of this, and that really looked at these different histories from artistic and activist practices of the present. But also, I think that, and what I like about them is that basically, coming back to the beginning, they make traces of spaces and of moments in which, there's a collectivity, there is a sense of, like, possibility, of imagination, of resistance, of actually, I don't know, I think all of these for me are spaces in which we can learn something that doesn't have only to do with queer survival. It has to do with the moments in which we're in, that have to do with, like, ecological disaster, that have to do with, like, I don't know, heartbreak, with divisions in communities, that have to do with all different kinds of things. So it's not only for queer identified people, it's just to really think about how different life experiences interconnect, and what they have to offer in moving forward. So so they will be here, and there's more stuff. So if you're interested in some of these things, I don't know, I find it hard to kind of go through them all, but definitely, even though, I mean, I'm disillusioned with institutions, I definitely like to use them as spaces for dissemination and for, you know, like, kind of channeling different kind of resistant, non-normative, and alternative possibilities of being in the world together. So in that way, I definitely, I'm still here in some way. Yeah, but I'm curious also what you guys have to say, because I think, like, people who are coming to these kind of talks often have also their own practice. So if there's something that you want to share also in relation to these questions, would be really nice to hear from you.
Hey, thank you so much for this beautiful discussion. I wanted to ask each of you, actually, what do you find right now in queer art and queer curating? What threads, themes, or questions do you find the most interesting right now to yourself? Like, it could be maybe gray zones inside of queerness, or I don't know, whatever. Like, what do you like? What are you interested in right now?
Anastasia, your practice is very interesting. Thank you very much. I know that you were not asking about this, but it's to the point because what we like, I'm sorry using this we, whatever that means, what I like in queer art, that it's usually personal, and when it's personal in this sort of deeper level, when I can connect a concrete individual and the history and different layers of different cultures, mixture of cultures, mixture of experiences, but coming through very specific personal lens. And then together with some maybe theoretical, I don't know, background or something, when you have this personal story, but you have it interconnected with what's interesting, with fiction or with theoretical writings, with, I don't know, Donna Haraway, Ursula Le Guin, something which inspires your imagination. So, and also reinventing those, I mean, we are living in the world. Of course, we are interested in ourselves. Everybody is interested in herself, himself, themselves. So other people are interesting. So I'm interested in each and every queer person, what they can tell. But also like not in a banal way, in somehow specific way, like finding that way, those words, language, maybe specific dictionary. I'm interested in dictionaries, actually. I'm very much interested in dictionaries. I think everyone should compile their own dictionary. Queer dictionary, any dictionary, rainbow dictionary, just like, could be very small dictionary, like 3 words. This is my dictionary, hello. You want to understand me? Here are some important things about me. Yeah, so I'm thinking that art which is also personal and political, as in old sense, but it should be political. But I'm not afraid of activism, because sometimes we suffer, we meaning queer community, because people from outside, they like us to put into the position and say that, oh, but this is activism, this is no art, this is not enough, it's not good quality, this quality issue, which is always thrown at this queer art. You need to do certain aesthetics in this very modernist term. Fuck aesthetics. I mean, people somehow still have idea that there is this grand aesthetics. There is no such things. There are so many aesthetics. There is queer aesthetics, there is camp aesthetics, trans aesthetics, any kind of aesthetics. So why they are pushing you into this specific aesthetics, which is like this very modernist, formal approach, still like quality. Yeah, so it's like they are trying to put you in their own basket, but we don't want to be in that basket. So that's what is interesting to me.
For me, some very similar things are when I think about queer art, I'm very interested in diaries. And then how art is a diary, like how it inscribes people's experiences. But at the same time, sometimes it's, I don't know, have this feeling that sometimes it's on the edge of being too intimate to share with the wider public. And that's, I don't know, the balance. And I can introduce my recommendation instantly. This is a catalog of José Leo Nilsson. This is a Brazilian artist, and it is the first retrospective exhibition in Europe. Yes. He died in 1993, that's why his art ends in there. At that year, and the exhibition was, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago or a year ago. And then I was, it sort of reminds me of Wojnarowicz as well, a bit, but it's a lot about this, I don't know, embroidery, about these small things, about inscriptions, when I talk about it, it reminds me of your work a bit as well, some parts. But when I think about it now, I didn't think about it before. But there is this small attention to the details, but also like putting personal meanings a lot, and then inscribing those meanings. And when I went to this exhibition, it was on the edge as well of this, on the edge being too intimate. And when I start feeling uncomfortable in the public space because it's so relatable, and then so I don't know how to deal with this conflict in myself about this. That I would want to keep it for myself, you know, the whole exhibition just for myself at my home, you know, like something like that, the feeling. So, but it's very special experience. So for me, it's very interesting, these sort of intimate things. Maybe for many people, like general public, many things wouldn't speak to them, I think, in the same way it spoke to me. And maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it is about this encoding in the public. Then, you know, like only some people can relate and see some things. So that's sort of what I'm interested in. I don't know.
Really? Well, I already said in the beginning that I am more maybe interested in queerly, this curating queerly. That means like methodologies and all kinds of relations with the institutions. And also for me, it's kind of interesting part. But also personally, I'm now very much interested in also, of course, it's kind of becoming a trend in the coloniality and in terms of how we speak about Soviet past. Like I'm talking about different generations, so I'm talking about older workers, women workers, and how they talk about their experiences. And for me, it's this oral histories and decoloniality, and also this kind of other way of like dealing with it, and also queering it in terms of how it's not proper of today, like how it's not, how we talk about like not proper histories, like how people talk about it, how they relate to all kinds of also sexualities and their own personal experiences, and how they as well reflect that when they talk about working environments that were like a huge part of their lives.
Cool. I also work in relation to coloniality quite a lot since a long time, and it keeps being an interest because unfortunately it's a reality. But in terms of practice, I'm really, really interested and more interested in artistic practice as world-making practice that doesn't necessarily, you know, or that works with very specific environments and very specific collectivities of life, also as a spiritual practice. I mean, you will not be surprised because I've been talking so much against the institution somehow, but I'm more and more, I mean, I have been since a long time interested in collective practices, but also maybe, let's say, cultural practices that are not necessarily recognized as contemporary art practices, and the histories of these, and the way, yeah, there is, I don't know, like how they, or like how from making together a spiritual, cultural space that has to do with, I don't know, feelings of interconnectedness, historically, environmentally, between people and all kinds of peoples, not just humans. Yeah, I'm quite interested in these things that are also ephemeral and that happen for a specific reason, that can be resistance, that can be healing, that can be journeys of peoples, and the poetics of that. and how we can translate them into wider spaces, but not necessarily in the sense of like creating representation, but in the sense of creating transmission, in which people maybe find ways of connecting to that. And that might sound quite abstract, but I'm quite, just to have one example, I'm quite proud because I'm learning to resoprint at the moment because I'm quite interested in zines. And so this was just made on Friday, and this is a zine that comes out of a series of a project called Dest, and Dest is an online video art platform that my friend Ulrike Gerhardt, who actually is the bridge to you and to you as well, so Ulrike is here in spirit, has co-initiated with me some years ago, and it's a platform for video art that looks at post-socialist environments and histories from a queer, feminist, and decolonial perspective. And this particular zine is beautiful because this year we invited a few collectives to work with us, and one of them is called Nyasan Collective from Hanoi, and they invited filmmakers that were dealing with the 1990s, 1980s, 1990s, from in Vietnam and from the perspective of Vietnamese diaspora, and they invited this filmmaker called Vu Thu Ha. Who I had heard of because I'm connected to Nyasan through a friend who then invited me 10 years ago to go to Hanoi, and she was going out with this person. So somehow also to say all our relationships are also shaped by desire, by friendship, and all of this. Anyway, Vu Thu Ha made this film in 2002 with a collective of really badass Asian American queers who were active in the punk scene, who were active in culture and music, not necessarily contemporary art, and she was not a filmmaker at the time. She just got a kind of scholarship to have access to film material. And so what they did is this film called Shut Up, White Boy, which is really intensely beautiful. It's like a revenge fantasy, and it has different, stages in it. And they have refused, we showed it in the festival, but they have refused to show it online. For different reasons that they are also talking about in this interview. And but what became really clear, and because they kind of refused that, Tang, the curator of that selection, or co-curator of that selection, and I were like, okay, let's talk to Thu Ha and some of the people involved in the film to understand a bit better where it came from and why they feel precious about how it circulates. And the stories that come out here are really beautiful because they talk about how they were coming from a space in which there was so much harassment, and suddenly the realization that somehow something needed to be created together to think through this, to play with this, and to fuck this really. And so they came together as a group of people and scripted the whole film, and then kind of made these fantasies together, acted in the films, produced and made the music for everything, and then kept it basically for themselves. So basically, it is shown and has been shown in different festivals, but it's really beautiful and eloquent how both Leslie, one of the people active in the film, who's part of punk music movement, queer punk music movement in the US, and Thu Ha talk about it, because it's really about, it was a kind of journey that they had to do together, and the fact that they can access that film between themselves, and that they were able to take revenge in a way, not physically, but in their political imagination and in playing these things through with each other. It just makes a lot of sense for me to kind of use art and cultural practice in these kind of ways that you can say, there's very different ways of describing these things, but I think I'm learning a lot about these kind of a bit more ways that don't give so much of a shit, in a way, about that the mainstream audience has access to stuff. It's more about how can we use these things to actually help ourselves survive and create a world in which we can exist in joy and in pain together. So yeah, that's what I'm interested in also, and that's why I'm unbecoming a curator as a co-maker, which I have been for a long time. But basically, yeah, to really think about like what is my body, what is my language, what is my fantasy, what is my desire in all of this, and how can I, with people, yeah, make these spaces together.
Thank you.
So I think we are finishing because people are already leaving and we took a lot of time. Yeah, so sorry for this, but apparently, yeah, we would talk and talk and talk if we could. I don't know if there are some questions, but maybe not. Oh God, it's not. Yeah, maybe you can come up here and ask and talk with us. So thank you.
Thank you for moderating so well.
Thank you, Agnė. Very well.
Oh my God.